So in the last tutorial, I showed you how to make a mini golf, or I guess also a golf ball. They're the same thing, but I never showed you how I actually made the grass in the render, which is something that's super easy to make. So I thought I'd just whip up a very quick tutorial about that. So here's a scene, kind of where we left off with, a golf ball or a mini golf ball with some lighting, shit like this, and we just want to add in grass. To do this, first of all, we need to add in a ground plane. So this should be, where the ball is resting. I'm gonna just scale it up so it's taking up most of our camera view. And the essence of what I'm going to show you is we're just going to make a hair particle system and do some procedural node magic to make it look good, okay? So to do that, we need an emitter, and that's going to be the plane. So once you have your plane set up, I don't want to see any of this stuff in my periphery. It's blinding. I can't focus. So into your camera settings, go to viewport display, pass your part out. This is a nice setting that lets you hide stuff, okay? So now with our plane selected, which is gonna be our ground object, let's make a particle system. So particles, make one and make it a hair particle system, okay? Which is gonna, I feel like this is a phobia for somebody. This just looks horrible. So what we need to do is just kind of mess around with this hair particle system until it looks good, and we can do this in solid mode. So hair length, bring it down until it's like, the height of grass. I guess it depends if it was trimmed or if it's wild grass, if you want variation. I'm just gonna make it go like roughly this high on our golf ball. Again, I don't know if this is accurate, but whatever. Set this, and then second of all, we need more hair. So let's bump this up by 10,000. Okay, that's looking better. Maybe something like 20,000 is where we can settle. And most of the grass, by the way, I know this is looking horrible. Most of the grass we're going to interpolate via children, which is going to let us add in some variation. But to begin with, make sure you have a density that looks something like this. Okay. Next, to make this look fuller, so this isn't like a balding. This isn't a self-conscious field of grass that's, trying to get hair grass transplants or anything. What the fuck was I saying? Go to children is the point. Set this to interpolated, and basically what this does is for every 2 hair strands, it's going to interpolate some number of grass particles, which are hair particles in between, okay? So the smaller this number is, the less we're going to interpolate. The bigger it is, the more it's going to be. Important point, this number and this number, one of them is for the viewport, so this is what we see, and one of them is what we see when we render. I'm going to keep it the same for both, although if you want a faster viewport performance, just bring it down for this one. But just know that this is what we see on render, okay? Okay, so we have a bit of grass. It's looking okay, but, it just kind of looks like, goosebump hairs, right? That doesn't actually look like grass. So the secret is go to roughness. This is what's going to add in the variation. And again, this is something that can only be done once we have children's. If we don't have children, I don't know if we can add in roughness, I don't think. Go to roughness, add in a bit of randomness, like 0.1. I guess that's a bit too much. We could divide that by 2. By the way, you can type in math expressions in here if you didn't know. Just put in a roughness value that looks pretty good. It depends on the kind of grass you're going for, etc. But beyond that, we can also add in, different kinds of variation. You could add in some of this uniform stuff that might make it look a bit too insane, but this is what makes it kind of look like hills. So maybe we kind of add in like 2%, just a tiny bit to add in a bit of variation. And then also for clumping, which, groupings of particles are going to stick together as if there's some moisture or something. We could add in a bit of clumping. Nothing crazy, maybe 20%. So some grass particles that are near each other will clump. If you make it insane, the clumping will be insane. So I'm going to say 20%. Okay. This is a good start. You could mess around with more settings. There's, kink and stuff like this, so you can make it curly and kinky. But generally, I'm pretty okay with this particle system. Now, to make it look good, we need to mess with materials, okay? So make sure this is locked in, and make sure this is not set to regrow, because we want one particle system. It should just look like that. Done. Okay, shading workspace. What do we do? Well, in the shading workspace, again, we're going to be using cycles because we're using HDRIs, whatever. Select the plane object, the one that has emission coming out of it, the one that has the particles. So select your emitter. That's going to be the ground. We're going to create a material. And the way this works currently, and we could mess with it, but the way it works currently is anything we do to this material is not only going to change the emitter, like the plane, but also the particles coming out of it. You can see it changed the whole color. If we want to separate the two, hair info node is perfect since we're using a hair, right? So we have this is strand, which is going to be white when it's a hair particle. And if it's the plane, you can see, we have the actual geometry down here. It's going to be black. So we can make the ground brown and the grass green, whatever. But I'm not going to mess with that. Since the hair or the grass is so thick, it doesn't seem to matter. So let's pick a color that looks pretty good. So it should be some Pretty saturated green that isn't as intense, maybe a little less saturated, something like this. Again, this is dependent on the quality of grass or the type of grass you want, but universally, no matter what kind of grass you want, something that is going to increase this realism is we shouldn't have a single color, right? Some grass, just like your hair, like your beard, sometimes you have red hairs and stuff like this, there should be some variation, okay? And with this hair info node, we have a random thing, which gives us a 0 to 1 value for each hair strand, which is perfect because we can use this to mix RGB. So we're going to mix two colors, this as the factor, and the factor is saying how much are we going to mix them. And we can just have two different colors of grass. So one of them can be the green, and then the other one could be like a more, autumny, dry grass or something like that. I don't know. Just add in a bit of variation. And you can see the more, insane we make this, the more obvious it is that some hair grass things look different than others. So you can choose how much variation you want. I'm just going to go with something like this. And let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's already much better. A second thing we can do is grass tends to kind of look different as we go from the ground and above. Why? Because the bottom of the grass strands should have a lot of dirt, a lot of darkness to them, whereas the top, the ones that are touching the sunlight, look dry and kind of crisper, which is a company that's booming right now, and the technology. To do this, we're going to look at the intercept input. This is going to be black at the bottom, and then it rises to 1 as we go upwards. So that's exactly what we want, right? So we can take this, we're going to mix this color variation now with a multiplication of black. So we're going to make some areas darker than others because we're going to multiply by black, right? And if we were to use this as a factor, this is kind of exactly the opposite of what we want. So this is going to be black at the top, and then we're going to get brighter colors on the bottom, as you can see. And maybe that's what you want, but I'm just going to flip this, okay? To do this, there's a couple ways. I'm just going to use a color ramp because I want the additional control. So first of all, we flip these handles. So now you can see the bottom of the grass is darker than the top. But since we have a color ramp, we can kind of control how high this darkness goes up, which is pretty cool. But this just adds in quite a bit of realism because now the gaps in the grass kind of look more, like there's something under there. So you can mess around with this, but this is a good start. I'm just going to play around with these colors just a bit more. I'm thinking it should be maybe 0.7 saturation. The grass I want is going to be a bit more popping, so something like this. And now let's set up our scene to look more real. By the way, one more thing that you might want to do for this shader before we actually get to render settings and stuff like this is grass is kind of reflective, it kind of depends on your grass, so you might want to play with this roughness. Definitely not 0, that's too shiny, but if it's like wet grass, then it's going to be shinier than dry grass or whatever. You can mess around with this roughness value, or if you want a more accurate shader. I don't do this because of the render times and I don't like the way it looks too much. A translucent BSDF is also a great way to make grass. You just plug this in here, you plug in the color, and this is a good way to start, and you can mix these two. But I just like using the principled BSDF because it renders faster in my experience, okay? Okay, we have grass. Why does it not look that real, that good yet? Well, it's because of a couple things. Well, first of all, a golf ball, a mini golf ball, is a very tiny object. You never look at it and have everything in focus because it's kind of in this macro lens scale. Like you need to use, or micro, I don't know, you need to use a fancy lens to look at it from this close. So I'm going to go to my camera, I'm going to go to the settings, I'm going to go to depth of field, and we want it to focus on the ball. So that's going to be what's in focus. And then we can bring down our f-stop. So basically we're just going to add in some, a shallow depth of field where it's focusing on the ball, and this already makes it look, the composition's nicer, but it also looks more real because you never see this without some blur. It's so incredibly small. I mean, it's not that small. An insect is smaller. And maybe this is a bit extreme. 0.5 is a bit better. Okay. Also, you can mess around with the color of the golf ball. Remember, in the last tutorial, I mean, you don't really need to watch that one if you're just interested in grass, but we made this like random distribution thing where we can pick the color and stuff like this. Normally, you're used to seeing a white ball and stuff like this, and we can also mess around with the amount of dirt since now it's in the grass. We made a slider for this dirt accumulation. I mean, that's a bit intense, but whatever. So depth of field, all of this. And then another thing you want to consider is you might want to mess around with either which lighting or HDRI you're using, or maybe the angle. I think technically we're using a interior one right now, but you could just like cycle through some HDRIs to get different lighting conditions. So this is like an actual outdoor one with harsh shadows. This is an overcast day. This is indoors, which makes no sense, but whatever. If you're playing mini golf indoors, that's fine. You just want to cycle through these and pick one that you like. But in essence, that is how you make grass without any I mean, there are better ways to make it. There's add-ons and stuff like this. But if you just want the basic kind of, grass particle system, this is how you would make it. So anyways, hopefully you learned something. If you didn't, I'm sorry I just wasted your time. But what are you seeing on the right? Is it a list of fingernails I need to clip? No. It's patrons, 670 some. Why are they patrons? Because they get blend files like this one. I've already uploaded it, but I'll probably upload another version of this. You can get any blend file I've ever made, including the old ones, with just a 1-month subscription. So this is going to be available. Other previous projects are available. Future projects are going to be available. Additionally, at a different tier, there is exclusive tutorials that are not posted to either channel. Recently, I made a deepfake tutorial, Patreon exclusive, that's going to be uploaded in a day or two once the CG Matter video goes live. I didn't make that available for everybody because I don't think telling everybody how to make a deepfake's the smartest idea. So I made that one exclusive. I'm probably going to do some more this month. I have a fun idea with the piano. Those exist behind the scenes, Discord, early access. These all exist. If you are interested, there's a link in the description. And if you're not, then you've probably already clicked away. So anyways, thank you to the patrons. Everybody else, I hope you learned something about grass and making a mini golf ball scene. And now I'm going to move on to a different project because I don't want to talk about this anymore. Hopefully you enjoyed. See ya.